CT23 with Eric Parker.
Welcome back. And one of the early appointments in his first term, Governor Ned Lamont tapped the former president of Metro North Railroad to serve as commissioner of Connecticut's Department of Transportation. As the governor begins his second term, Joseph Giulietti is moving on, stepping down this past week. A favorite guest of this program, we wanted to have him back one more time to talk about all he's accomplished leading DOT and what projects are in play for the agency's next commissioner. Commissioner Giulietti, welcome.
Well, thank you, Eric. So great to see you again.
I'm glad we could have you back one more time before we transition to a new commissioner. And I want to talk about a lot of what's happened over these past few years and a lot about the new commissioner. But sometimes news gets in the way of these interviews. And unfortunately, we had this tragic loss of State Representative Quentin Williams over the past week. And you hear news like that and you think, gosh, something should have been done. I know this is something you and I have talked about, this issue of wrong-way drivers.
Yep.
What can we do about it?
Well, Eric, you know, it continues to be a problem, and even the legislature gave us $20 million to start working on a project, and we've already hit 9 of the exit ramps with putting up new lighting and signs. But I'm going to say I'm a little disappointed that that's not going to be the answer to what's going on right now. And even in this case here that we're talking about, it was not down an exit ramp that we're talking about. What we're really talking about, because in 80% of the investigations of what has happened and the wrongful deaths that have happened, we have found that the drivers were impaired. And, you know, it's an ongoing problem. 2022 there was as many deaths and accidents as in the 3 years prior combined. And you and I have had the conversations about how people are driving on the highway, how fast they're driving, how they feel like they're still in a pandemic and the driving is crazy. So we are continuing to go and put in every method that we can, including the fact that we're trying to go to solar charge lighting systems that'll come up so we can get them in faster without having to cut through the road. So we will continue to do things that will be, again, an alert. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to responsible driving, and people that are impaired should not be driving.
And just real quick, so we have time for other stuff, but this is, you're going up an on-ramp the wrong way.
Yep.
It's going to flash at you and maybe try to get your attention and say, hey, knock it off.
It's going to flash, and there'll even be, we're working on reflectors that are down in the road that'll also be coming at you. So aside from lights coming at you and reflectors coming at you, but I am also going to be very candid with you with everything that we've tried, okay? The fact that you're dealing with impaired drivers, okay, all we can say is that we will be doing everything we can to make sure that people are aware they're going in the wrong direction. As
you wrap up your tenure as commissioner, I just saw you last week at this announcement with Secretary Buttigieg talking about the money for the Gold Star Bridge. Do you feel that you leave this state and its transportation network in a better position than you found it?
Oh, definitely. To be very candid, and you and I had these conversations in the beginning when I came, you know that we were desperate to try and get some additional funding. We had tried for tolling. You know, we were a state that its infrastructure, both on the rail side and on the highway side, was in desperate need of funding. As I go out the door now, we got 40% more in federal funding from the federal government. You were there for when, you know, I still use Mayor Pete was able to go and offer us $158 million in a grant that will accelerate that job being done. We are now putting in EV charging stations. We've got money that will kick off projects for the 40% more money, federal money, for the next 5 years. And that's thanks to not only our congressional delegation, but to the state legislature that gave me the matching funds and to a governor who was focused on infrastructure. So on the rail side, our partnership with Amtrak, I'm very, very close with the president of Amtrak. They are getting a lot more money because this is their densest corridor. So it's the densest rail corridor, the densest highway corridor. And as I leave, as opposed to when I came in, when we were so desperate for funds to make things happen, we are now in a position that our desperation now is to make sure we get plenty of people working on these things to keep these things moving along because we've got the money to get them going and keep them in place.
Let me ask you about the new commissioner, Garrett Giulietti. He's been your deputy. He has some experience with the National Governors Association, the Malloy administration before that. What can people expect from the new commissioner?
Well, I'm glad you did your homework on him, okay? I actually met Garrett after I became commissioner here. I went down, I was in Washington, and he was down at NGA, the Governors Association. And I had found then that he also had experience working with multiple departments here in the DO at the state. So I brought him in. I sometimes chided him over the fact that, you know, he worked with these other departments that I didn't quite understand, so maybe he could give me a little bit of understanding. He's very, very, extremely hardworking individual. I feel very confident. I hired him, and you remember when I left Metro North, the woman that I hired as the executive vice president became the president and is now doing Metro North and Long Island. If I've been successful at anything, it's making sure that I leave an agency in good hands, and I know that I'm leaving an agency in good hands with Garrett. He knows all the other commissioners, he knows a lot of the legislature, and he knows Washington, and those are keys to making sure that we're going to be in a good position for funding and a good position for our agency going forward.
Well, you talk about all the different angles that the Department of Transportation touches, and I think people might see something like the Secretary Pete announcement, or just talking about something on the rails and say, oh, another political announcement. But do you look at it more as stuff that affects people's lives? Like, how do you, I think you've been outspoken that you're not a politician. So how do you look at these announcements?
Well, one, I'm glad you said that. I've been unaffiliated with a party for at least 15, 20 years, okay? You have to work with both sides. And the truth of the matter is, when you start getting money like this, one, it's a reflection of whether or not they feel that you can handle the money that's coming towards you. The DOT has a fantastic reputation of being good stewards of the public money. When I first came here, there were a lot of discussions over, whether or not, we were fat, there was too many people there, this, that. Next thing you know, we're desperate for people to come on in. So when you talk about how does this money come in, what does it mean to me? It's a reflection to me that the people in Washington, okay, know that they will not be embarrassed over any of the funding that's going to come here because it's going to be put to good use. The other end is that whether or not we talk about Waterbury and the Mix Master and the amount of work that needed to be done there, the fact that we had highways that were designed for 50,000 cars a day that are carrying 230,000 cars a day, all right, that we needed this money there. We needed it on our rail system where projects that should have been done in 3 years were going on 30 years later because they needed the money for it. So the way I look at it, it means that you've gotten a good relationship with your congressional partners, that at the state level, the legislators know that this is an agency that's going to get things done, that they do everything they can to support you. And I mean it. I've been very, very fortunate to have a governor that truly was focused on infrastructure. And one of the examples I'd like to leave with you is that when this whole pandemic began, and I was sitting there watching other states shut down, close their DOTs, close their rest areas, I turned to the governor, we had a conversation, and I said, the DOT wants to work, your contractors want to work. And instead of our shutting down, we instead increased the volume of work because without the cars traveling on the highway, we could give out more miles to go and get done. So we accelerated work all the way through a pandemic. And I think that reflects well, and it tells you something when you start seeing when a Secretary of Transportation will come on out to deliver you a grant, one of the largest grants that they gave, one of only 4 they gave out in the country, all right, it reflects well on the state.
Well, I appreciate you being here. I know you said you're going to go visit the grandkids in 3 different states. You got a lot there. But once you go say hi to them, maybe come back and talk to us just as the retired commissioner. We'll have you on again.
I actually would look forward to it. I've got a lot of family up here. I've got a brother that's an attorney in North Haven. I'm the oldest of 6. My wife's the oldest of 5. So we've got a lot of pullbacks, a lot of heartstrings that bring us back here, and I would look forward to that.
Well, when you come visit them, come visit us. Joe Giulietti, the now retired commissioner of the Department of Transportation, thank you for being with us one more time on CT23.
And thank you. You've done a public service for the state and for the DOT in being able to put that message out there for us. Thank you, Eric.
All right. Thank you, Joe.